Oh. Welcome to Meaningful Mornings. Do you all remember the story the father read to the daughter that I shared yesterday about confusion, elections, moving to France? I came across another insightful cartoon from the New Yorker. Try to visualize. There's a gentleman who's standing up and he's looking at a group of people around a table. They're in an office, they're having a meeting, and he shares. In light of national and world events, we've repealed our no crying at your desk policy. We've repealed it. Sometimes don't you just feel like crying over all of the conflict in your city, in your municipality, in your state, in your country, in the world, to ensure that we're not crying for no reason, but rather we may cry, but we are going to exert to change this conflict into peace. Everyone relax the body, enjoy the breath, and pray with the mind. Try to zoom into, try to isolate a conflict that is making you feel like crying, and offer peace to that conflict. Loka samasta sukino bhavatu. May all, it doesn't matter what kind of human they are, including animals, plants, and stones, may all be peaceful. In Bhagavad Gita's chapter 1, Prince Arjuna does not want to fight. He is flighting. He is freezing. He doesn't want to engage in fighting, especially because his fighting will result in killing, and that too of those who are close to him. Acharya Bhishma, Acharya Drona, and so on. For us, we feel and do the same. But our fighting, killing for those who are close to us, what this means for us is the ego. We are freezing, we are flighting from fighting the ego. If you fight the ego, you will kill the ego. even closer than any relationship you have, is the ego. So what he went through in chapter 1, we are constantly going through. Shri Krishna has shared in verse 17, the one who has used their intellect against the ego, and for such a person, there is no doing, there is only being. I want you to really reflect on being and how associated feelings that come with being are ease, comfort, peace. Don't make this noun, even though it's a verb, but really it's a noun of being. Don't make this abstract. Don't make this logical. You know what it feels like to be. The whole notion of doing, this is a child of the ego. I'll explain. The ego's primary expression is separation. Infinity, as if felt by the ego, takes infinity and separates this into finite, 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 finite. Is that clear to everyone? Egotistical people, they don't unite, they divide. They don't bring people together. They make people move away from each other. There are a lot of leaders / politicians. That's their strategy, isn't it? Divide and conquer. So this is the primary expression of the ego. Then this gets pushed into the intellect. The secondary expression of the ego is identification. First it separates and then identifies with a portion of this separation. That is where the intellect starts to feel, I, that's the separation, am the doer. That's the identification. I hope the mechanisms of the ego are more clear to all. And so Shri Krishna is pushing back against this, fighting against this. To surrender actions means to not feel one is the doer. In doing so, one comes back to being. You will know that you're following through with what sounds like an abstract teaching, but it's not. It is most practical. You will know you're following through with this if you just start to feel more light. Light-footed, light-hearted. For the 50 seekers in our silence retreat, I first oriented them to not depend on circumstances, articles, and beings. That is what Sri Krishna taught in Bhagavad Gita's chapter 6, verses 7, 8, and 9. If you don't depend on circumstances, articles, and beings, you just become more light. So you will feel lighter, and the ends of feeling lighter is you do feel light, as in the spirit or awareness. I'm reading to you a line from Pujya Swami Chinmayananda's writing. An egoless human of wisdom, when they work in any field, they are but expressing the infinite will, and therefore, in that attitude of total surrender and complete dedication, no action can leave any impression in their mind. sharing one more reflection from verse 17 before we proceed to 18. One of the best sutras in the Narada Bhakti Sutra is Sutra 61. Rishi Narada makes a statement, Loka Hano, which means the nature of the external. The nature of the world, the nature of circumstances, articles, and beings is Hani. Hani means loss. Hani means going away. Hani means change. How many of you feel you know this? You live like that. Now here's the test if you live like that. With this understanding, this insight. Chinta na karya. Chinta means worry. Na karya does not. For the one who knows the truth of the external, the world, circumstances, articles, beings, is that they are losing, going away. One does not worry. Their thoughts are used in a much grander sense than this smallness. If you worry, you don't understand. All is being lost. If you do understand all is being lost, then you don't worry. Verse 18. There are a lot of technical verses in chapter 18 which are elaborated upon. You will find this to be technical, but we'll invest more reflections into this. Jnanam jneyam parijñāta trivida karma chodana karanam karma karteti trivida karma sangraha. Joy. I don't know if you remember, but when we got into, I believe it was verse 14 and 15, I had shared, we're going to go into the epistemology of action. Why act? How act? I distinctly use those words. Now more of this is elaborated upon in this verse. In the first line is, why act? Why do we act? Trivida, there are three impulses, reasons why we act. Chodana means impulse or reason, karma, act. So, why act? Trivida, there are three expressions of this. They are, number one, jnata. Jnata in English means knower. The deduction from this, it is our vasana, our print, that makes us act. I was interacting with, I can't remember who, they were going to school for engineering. And his older brother is in school for nursing. And I've known them forever. So why is one going towards nursing and why one towards engineering? I would say significant reason is their print. Their prints are different. The way that Puja Swami Tejamananda taught us about this, he shared. Sometimes when you act, you feel that it's random. Why do I have this thought? Why do I have this action? It is not random. It is because it is your vasana. Here's number two. Jneya. Jneya means knowing. From knower to knowing. Here is where you're experiencing the world, and from that comes a reason to act. The example that Guruji shared with us is you see a commercial, and from that commercial, you want what's happening in that commercial. See how you're experiencing the world, and then that commercial comes and changes what you're acting for. Now I definitely need these sharp sets of knives. If you never saw that commercial, you wouldn't want those knives, correct? And the third is jnana. Jnana means knowledge. So from knower to knowing to knowledge. This can also be interpreted as known. Known. It's in reference to what you've already experienced. It is the past. The implication being here, when I go to Columbus, then that is where I was introduced to Jenny's ice cream. So now every time I fly or drive to Columbus, because I've experienced Jenny's ice cream, I want to experience it again. How awesome is Sri Krishna that he's taking something we've done our whole lives, that is acting, but providing clarity on this so that we can change this. So you don't get lost in these details, the vision of why Sri Krishna is sharing this. For all three of these reasons, there is a propensity to act for fulfillment. As long as you act for fulfillment, you are doing. And with doing comes dying. Now I have to be brief and I'll explain more tomorrow. That's the why act. Imagine that's step one. Then this gets expressed into step two, which is how act. The second line, karma is act, sangraha is how. How act, trivida. Here too there are three factors. They are, I'll be brief, karta, which is the doer. The doer uses the karana, that is the instrument. And the doer uses instruments for karma. Here's where you have to hear me and then reflect on this. Karma here means result. Result. A doer uses instruments for a result. The deduction from this second line, from this verse, this section is, our actions are cyclical. I want to act for fulfillment, so there's a doer, the doer does, and gets a result, doesn't feel fulfilled, so what does the doer do? Does again with those instruments. That is a great definition of samsara. Drowning in a life of mundane existence, like a robot. From inspiration to application, your application yesterday was to live by step 1, 2, 3. That is share, serve, and summon. How many of you tried? I assure you, if you tried to live like this, you had a solid day. Specifically with summon. When I think of summon, I think of like back in the day times of people going to kings and queens, and if you were summoned, you had to bow in front of that king, queen, correct? That's how we should be with divinity. I remember divinity, I bow to divinity. Your application for this morning is to reflect on how you're going to celebrate Bhagwan Rama's Jayanti or birthday. 3 days from now, that is April 9th, Navaratri begins. And then Tuesday, April 16th is Bhagwan Rama's Jayanti or birthday. We will have a special meaningful mornings for him, for us. What are you going to do to yourself for his birthday? Shanti. Shanti, Shantihi. Be joy.